Hey there, welcome to Busy Horse Channel, where amazing stories never stop. If you crave mind-blowing surprises, epic drama, and perfect revenge moments, you are in the right place. Subscribe today and jump into tales that will leave you speechless, laughing, and wanting more. Incredible characters, unbeatable twists, and super satisfying endings. That's what Busy Horse Channel brings you every single time. Smash that bell and let's dive in.
The rain hammered against our loft windows like bullets, each drop a reminder that some storms never pass. They just get worse. I should have been sleeping, but sleep had become a luxury I couldn't afford. Not with Lena coming home later and later each night. Her excuses getting thinner than her wedding dress hanging in our closet. The digital clock on my nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. when I heard her key in the lock. 3 months ago, she would have slipped into bed quietly, kissing my forehead and whispering apologies. Now she stumbled through the door like she owned the place, which technically she did. We both did. Everything we'd built together at TechFlow Industries, our startup that was finally taking off, was split 50-50. Partners in business, partners in life, partners in what I thought was happiness. Eli, her voice carried that particular mix of guilt and defiance I'd grown to recognize. You awake? I sat up in our king-size bed, the one we'd bought to celebrate our first $1 million contract. Hard to sleep when your fiancé treats home like a hotel. Lena Carter, soon to be Lena Green, or so I'd thought, stood in the doorway of our bedroom. Even in the dim light, I could see her makeup was smudged, her usually perfect blonde hair disheveled. Her dress, the little black number I'd bought her for our anniversary, was wrinkled in ways that told stories I didn't want to hear. "We need to talk," she said. And those 4 words hit me like a punch to the gut. Nothing good ever started with "we need to talk." At 3 a.m? This should be interesting. I swung my legs out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor. Let me guess. Another late-night strategy session with David? Planning our next product launch required champagne and dim lighting? David Lynn. My business partner, my best friend since college, my best man. The guy who'd helped me build TechFlow from nothing more than an idea and a maxed-out credit card. The guy who'd stood by my side when my father died. Who'd helped me pick out Lena's engagement ring, who'd given the toast at our engagement party about how perfect we were together. Lena's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought she might deny it. Instead, she did something worse. She confirmed every suspicion I'd buried under layers of trust and denial. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The words hung in the air between us like a loaded tool. For exactly 3 seconds, I felt joy, pure, overwhelming joy. Then she spoke again. "It's David's." The world tilted. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my future, my reality shifted like sand beneath my feet. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to laugh and tell me it was some sick joke. Instead, she kept talking. "He really satisfies me, Eli, in ways you never could. But you'll still marry me, right? We can have it all, the business, the baby, the life we planned. You're a good man. You'll understand." I understood, all right. I understood that the woman I'd planned to marry in 6 weeks had been screwing my best friend. I understood that she was carrying his child. I understood that she expected me to just smile and play along, to be the good little husband while she lived her fantasy. But what she didn't understand was that Elliot Green, the guy who'd grown up in a trailer park, who'd clawed his way through MIT on scholarships and spite, who'd built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, wasn't the kind of man who rolled over when life kicked him in the teeth. "Of course I'll still marry you," I said, my voice steady as granite. "After all, what's a little infidelity between partners?" Relief flooded her face, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I knew you'd understand. You're so logical, so practical. That's why this will work. David brings the passion, you bring the stability. It's perfect." Perfect. She thought she could have her cake and eat it too. Thought she could keep both of us dancing to her tune. She thought I was weak, predictable, safe. She was about to learn how wrong she was. "I need some air," I said, grabbing my jacket from the chair. "This is a lot to process." "Where are you going? It's almost 3 a.m. "Just for a drive, I'll be back." But I wasn't going for a drive. I was going to the office, to my computer, to the financial accounts that Lena had never bothered to understand. She'd always been content to let me handle the boring technical stuff while she focused on marketing and relationship building. Her trust in my competence was about to become her biggest mistake. The TechFlow offices were dark and empty, just the way I needed them. I used my key card to get in, made my way to my corner office, and fired up my computer. The rain continued to pound against the windows as I worked, each keystroke a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I'd been living. First, I accessed our joint business account. $2 million, give or take. Not bad for a 3-year-old startup. With a few clicks, I transferred every penny to a new account I'd set up months ago as an emergency fund. Lena had signing authority, but she'd never bothered to learn the actual passwords. That was always Eli's department. Next came the real masterpiece. Our patents, 17 of them, all the intellectual property that made TechFlow valuable, were registered under a holding company I'd created when we first started. Lena's name was on the paperwork, but the actual control had always been mine. Another few clicks, and ownership transferred to a shell corporation I'd set up in Delaware. Perfectly legal, perfectly devastating. By 5 a.m., I'd dissolved our partnership, transferred all company assets to my new entity, and sent a mass email to our entire contact list. Clients, investors, suppliers, friends, family. The subject line was simple: wedding canceled, bride carrying best man's child. The message was even simpler. Due to recent developments involving infidelity and pregnancy, the wedding of Lena Carter and Elliot Green, scheduled for next month, has been canceled. TechFlow Industries is also undergoing restructuring. All business inquiries should be directed to my personal email. Thank you for your understanding, Eli. Then I changed all the passwords, revoked Lena's access to everything, and sat back to watch the sunrise paint the sky the color of revenge. My phone started buzzing around 6 a.m. First David, then Lena, then David again. I let them go to voicemail. I had work to do. The beauty of being a tech entrepreneur is that you learn to think 3 moves ahead. While Lena and David were probably still trying to figure out what hit them, I was already implementing phase 2 of what I'd started thinking of as the Satisfaction Project. My first stop was Rohan Patel's law office. Rohan had been my attorney since the early days of TechFlow, a sharp-dressed guy with an even sharper mind who specialized in business law and what he liked to call creative problem-solving. His office was in one of those glass towers downtown that screamed success, and his hourly rate matched the decor. Eli, he said, looking up from his mahogany desk as his secretary showed me in. I got your email and about 50 calls from various people asking what the heck is going on. I need you to file a lawsuit, I said, settling into the leather chair across from him. Breach of fiduciary duty, patent theft, and fraud against David Lin. Rohan raised an eyebrow. Your business partner, David Lin? Your best friend, David Lin? Your best man, David Lin? Former best friend. Turns out he's been doing more than just partnering with me in business. I laid out the whole sordid story, the affair, the pregnancy, Lena's casual assumption that I'd just go along with their arrangement. Rohan listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on his legal pad. This is messy, he said when I finished. But you're right about the legal grounds. If he was planning to cut you out of the business while sleeping with your fiancée, that's definitely breach of fiduciary duty. The patent theft angle is trickier, but if I can prove he was planning to steal your IP, he was. I have emails. I pulled out a flash drive. David's not as careful with his digital footprint as he thinks. These are from his personal email account. Discussions with potential investors about buying him out of TechFlow and starting a competing company. Using our patents. Rohan plugged in the drive and scrolled through the files, his expression growing more interested by the minute. Jesus, Eli. He was really planning to screw you over completely. Looks that way. So what can we do? We can bury him. $5 million in damages minimum. Maybe more if we can prove intentional infliction of emotional distress. He leaned back in his chair. But are you sure you want to go nuclear? Once we file this, there's no going back. Your friendship, your business relationship, everything, it's all gone. I thought about Lena's smug assumption that I'd just accept being humiliated, about David's betrayal, about the child that should have been mine growing in another man's lover's belly. File it, I said. Today. My next stop was the bank where I met with Jennifer Walsh, the relationship manager who'd handled our business accounts since day one. Jennifer was one of those competent professional women who could make million-dollar transfers feel as routine as depositing a paycheck. The transfers went through this morning, she confirmed, sliding a folder across her desk. All funds have been moved to your new personal account as requested. Mrs. Carter's access has been revoked per your instructions. Good. What about the safety deposit box? Also transferred to your sole control. The contents are secure. The safety deposit box contained the original patent documents, some emergency cash, and most importantly, backup drives, with every email, text message, and digital communication between David and Lena going back 6 months. I'd been suspicious longer than I'd admitted to myself and paranoid enough to start documenting everything. In the tech world, data is power, and I'd just armed myself with enough ammunition to destroy both of them. My phone buzzed with another call from David. I declined it and headed to my next appointment. Mick's Auto Shop wasn't the kind of place you'd expect a tech entrepreneur to hang out, but Mick Donnelly had been my friend since high school, back when I was just another poor kid from the wrong side of town trying to make something of himself. While I'd gone off to MIT, Mick had stayed home and built himself a successful business fixing cars and motorcycles. He was also the kind of friend who'd help you move a body without asking questions. Not that I was planning anything illegal. Holy crap, Eli, Mick said, wiping his hands on a greasy rag as I walked into his shop. I saw your email. Lena really cheated on you with David? Afraid so, and now she's pregnant with his kid. That's messed up, man. What are you going to do? I looked around the shop, at the tools, the equipment, the familiar atmosphere of the blue-collar competence I'd grown up around before computers and algorithms took over my life. I'm going to need a favor, I said. An hour later, I was back at the loft, waiting. Lena's car wasn't in her parking spot, but David's BMW was. Interesting. I took the elevator up to our floor and used my key to get in. They were in my living room, sitting on my couch, drinking my coffee and having what looked like a very serious conversation. They both looked up when I walked in, and the expressions on their faces were priceless. Guilt, fear, anger, and confusion all mixed together. Eli! Lena jumped up, smoothing down her hair. Where have you been? I was worried sick. Just taking care of some business, I said, hanging my jacket on the hook by the door. Morning, David. Shouldn't you be at the office? David had the decency to look embarrassed, at least. Eli, man, we need to talk. This whole situation... Oh, we're way past talking. I walked to the kitchen island and poured myself a cup of coffee from the pot they'd made. How's the job search going? Job search? Lena's voice was sharp. What are you talking about? Well, since TechFlow is under new management and neither of you work there anymore, I figured you'd be looking for employment. The job market's pretty tight these days, especially for people with your particular skill sets. David stood up, his face flushing red. You can't just fire us, Eli. We have contracts. We have rights. Had contracts, I corrected. Past tense. Funny thing about partnership agreements. They have all these clauses about moral turpitude and breach of fiduciary duty. Sleeping with your partner's fiancé while planning to steal his intellectual property tends to void those protections. You son of a witch, David snarled. You can't do this. Actually, I can. I did. It's done. I took a sip of my coffee. It was good coffee, the expensive kind Lena insisted on buying. I'd miss it. Oh, and David, you might want to check your email. My attorney filed some paperwork this morning that I think you'll find interesting. His phone buzzed as if on cue. He looked down at it, and the color drained from his face. $5 million, he whispered. That's just the opening bid. Could go higher depending on what else we discover during depositions. I looked at Lena, who was staring at David like she'd never seen him before. You might want to find yourself a good lawyer, sweetheart. Something tells me this is going to get complicated. There was a knock at the door. I set down my coffee and went to answer it, knowing exactly who it would be. Sheriff's Department, the deputy said, tipping his hat. I'm looking for Ms. Lena Carter. That's me, Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ma'am, I have an eviction notice here. You have 24 hours to remove your personal belongings from these premises. Eviction? She looked at me in shock. Eli, this is our home. It's my home, I corrected. Always has been. The lease is in my name, the mortgage is in my name, and as of this morning, you're trespassing. The deputy handed her the papers and left. Lena stood there holding them, her hands shaking. You can't do this to me, she said. To us. We're having a baby. You're having a baby. With him. I nodded toward David, who was still staring at his phone in shock. Congratulations, by the way. I hope you'll be very happy together, somewhere else. David finally looked up from his phone. This isn't over, Eli. You're right, I said. It's just getting started. The next few days passed in a blur of legal documents, phone calls, and the kind of savage satisfaction that comes from watching your enemies realize they've underestimated you. Lena and David had moved into the Marriott downtown, one of those extended stay places that charge by the week. I knew this because I'd hired Detective Ray Sanders, a former Boston PD investigator who specialized in what he called information gathering. They're burning through cash fast, Sanders reported during our meeting at a coffee shop near his office. He was a lean, weathered man in his 50s who looked like he'd seen everything twice. Hotel bills, restaurant meals, legal consultations, your girlfriend's got expensive tastes, and your buddy David's credit cards are getting a workout. Ex-girlfriend, I corrected. What about the legal situation? David lawyered up with Morrison, Klein & Associates. Good firm, but expensive. They're going to fight the lawsuit, but from what I can see, you've got them dead to rights on the breach of fiduciary duty. The patent theft is trickier, but those emails you provided are pretty damning. I nodded. Morrison Klein was a white shoe firm that charged $600 an hour. At that rate, David would be bankrupt before the case ever went to trial. What about Lena? She's trying to get back into the building, but security won't let her up. Made quite a scene yesterday, actually. Hotel staff had to calm her down. Sanders slid a manila envelope across the table. Photos. I opened the envelope and looked at the pictures. Lena in the hotel lobby, gesticulating wildly at David. Lena crying in her car. Lena throwing what looked like a room service tray against a wall. She was unraveling, and it was beautiful. There's something else, Sanders said. Your friend David's been making some calls, trying to line up investors for a new company, using your technology. Even after the lawsuit, apparently he thinks he can fight it, or maybe he's just desperate. Sanders leaned back in his chair. Either way, he's digging himself deeper. I've got recordings of 2 phone calls where he specifically mentions using TechFlow's patents without authorization. Perfect. I paid Sanders' fee and headed back to the office. My office now, in the new space I'd leased under my company's name. It was smaller than the old TechFlow headquarters, but it was mine. No partners, no complications, no betrayals. My assistant, Maria, looked up as I walked in. Mr. Green, there's a woman here to see you. Says she's from TechFlow's old HR department. Anya Volkov had been our HR director for 2 years. A quiet, efficient woman who'd always seemed to fade into the background during company meetings. She was sitting in my waiting area, clutching a briefcase and looking nervous. Anya, I said, gesturing for her to follow me into my office. What can I do for you? I wanted to talk to you about what happened, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. About Lena and David. What about them? I knew. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I knew about the affair for months. Lena made me cover for her, said it was just a business relationship, but I knew better. She threatened to fire me if I said anything. I leaned forward, interested. What exactly did you know? Everything. The hotel meetings, the business trips that weren't really business trips, the way they'd disappear for hours during the day. Lena even had me book conference rooms for their private meetings. Anya opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. I kept records, dates, times, expenses. I thought maybe someday I'd need them to protect myself. The folder was a goldmine. Hotel receipts charged to company accounts. Restaurant bills for 2 during supposed client meetings where no clients existed. Travel expenses for conferences that David and Lena attended together while I stayed home working. It was all there, documented in Anya's meticulous handwriting. Why are you giving me this? I asked. Because what they did was wrong, and because, she hesitated, because Lena fired me yesterday. Said the company was restructuring and my position was eliminated. After 2 years of covering for her, she threw me away like garbage. I studied Anya's face. She was angry, hurt, and looking for revenge. In other words, she was perfect. How would you like a job? I asked. That afternoon, I got a call from Tara Morrison, not the lawyer, but Lena's best friend and former office gossip queen. Tara had been Lena's closest confidant, the kind of friend who knew all the secrets and loved to share them. Eli, honey, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I just heard about what happened. I'm so sorry. Are you? Of course. I had no idea Lena was, if I had known, I would have said something. That was interesting. Tara was many things, but subtle wasn't one of them. If she was calling me, it was because she wanted something. I appreciate that, Tara. How's Lena holding up? Oh, she's a mess. Crying all the time. saying you've ruined her life. She's staying at that hotel with David, but they're fighting constantly. He's stressed about the lawsuit. She's hormonal from the pregnancy. It's not pretty. That's too bad. She keeps saying you'll come around, that you'll forgive her once you calm down. I told her she's dreaming, but you know Lena. She thinks she can charm her way out of anything. What do you think, Tara? There was a pause. Honestly, I think she got what she deserved. I mean, I loved Lena like a sister, but what she did to you was unforgivable. Cheating is one thing, but getting pregnant and expecting you to just accept it, that's next level cruel. I'm glad someone sees it that way. Most people do. The whole office is talking about it. Well, the people who still have jobs anyway. I heard you shut down TechFlow, restructured it under new management. Smart, fresh start and all that. Another pause. Listen, Eli, I was wondering, are you hiring? I mean, I know we weren't super close before, but I always respected you, and I'm really good at what I do. And there it was. Tara was jumping ship, abandoning Lena now that the power dynamic had shifted. It was exactly what I'd expected and exactly what I needed. Come by the office tomorrow, I said. Let's talk. That evening I was working late when security called to tell me there was someone in the parking garage asking to see me. I knew who it was before I got downstairs. David was leaning against his BMW, looking like heck. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked up as I approached, and I could see the desperation in his face. Eli, he said, we need to talk. I thought we covered everything yesterday. Come on, man. We've been friends for 15 years. We built something together. Don't throw it all away over a woman. Over a woman? I stopped walking and stared at him. You think this is about Lena, isn't it? This is about you, David. You, my best friend, my business partner, my best man, deciding that everything I had was yours for the taking. My fiancé, my company, my patents, my future. You didn't just sleep with Lena. You tried to steal my entire life. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I pulled out my phone and played one of the recordings Sanders had given me. David's voice, clear as day, telling a potential investor about how he planned to leverage existing intellectual property in his new venture. David's face went white. Where did you get that? Does it matter? The point is, you're not just an adulterer, David. You're a thief. And thieves go to prison. You son of a witch! His voice was shaking with rage. You think you're so smart, so superior, but you know what? Lena came to me. She wanted me, not you. She said you were boring, predictable, that being with you was like being married to a computer. The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. And yet she still expected me to marry her and raise your bastard child. Funny how that works. She loves me, David said. We love each other. This isn't just some affair. We're building a life together. In a hotel room, with no jobs and no money. That's quite a life you're building. David stepped closer, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. Instead, he seemed to deflate. What do you want, Eli? What's it going to take to make this go away? Nothing you can give me, I said. Because what I want is for this to have never happened. I want my best friend back. I want my fiancé to have been faithful. I want the last 6 months of my life to have been real instead of an elaborate lie. Can you give me that? He didn't answer. I didn't think so. I turned to walk away, then stopped. Oh, and David, you might want to find a new car. I'm having this one repossessed tomorrow morning. Turns out it was purchased with TechFlow funds as a business expense, which means it belongs to the company, my company now. I left him standing there in the parking garage, staring at the BMW that would be gone by morning. It was petty, maybe, but sometimes petty felt pretty good. The next morning brought Seattle's version of a perfect storm, literally. Rain hammered the city like nature's own revenge, turning the streets into rivers and the sky into a gray canvas of misery. It seemed appropriate somehow, as if the weather was matching my mood. I was in my office reviewing quarterly projections when Maria buzzed me. Mr. Green, there's a situation in the lobby. I looked out my window and saw David's BMW being loaded onto a flatbed truck, right on schedule. But that wasn't the situation Maria was referring to. That would be Lena, standing in the lobby of my building, soaking wet and screaming at security. She's been here for 20 minutes, Maria said when I came downstairs. Security won't let her up, but she won't leave either. Lena looked like a drowned cat. Her perfect blonde hair plastered to her skull, her designer dress clinging to her body, her makeup running in black streams down her cheeks. She was magnificent in her misery, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Eli, she shrieked when she saw me. Thank God. Tell these idiots to let me up. We need to talk. No, we don't, I said calmly. And this is private property. You're trespassing. Trespassing? This is our building, our company, our life. Was, I corrected. Past tense. Now it's just mine. She lunged toward me, but security stepped between us. You can't do this. I'm pregnant. I'm carrying a baby. David's baby, I reminded her. Speaking of which, where's the proud father? Shouldn't he be here supporting you? Her face crumpled. He's meeting with lawyers about the lawsuit. Ah, abandoning you in your hour of need. How romantic. He's trying to fix this, to fix us. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, a gesture that would have been endearing once upon a time. Eli, please. I made a mistake, a terrible, horrible mistake. But we can work through this. We can what, Lena? Pretend your baby is mine? Play house while you keep screwing David on the side? What exactly did you think was going to happen here? I thought you loved me, she whispered. I did love you. I love the woman I thought you were. But that woman was a lie, wasn't she? The real Lena Carter is standing in front of me right now, selfish, manipulative, and apparently stupid enough to think I'd just roll over and take it. Security was getting antsy, clearly wanting to remove her, but waiting for my signal. I nodded toward the door. Ma'am, the guard said, taking her arm, you need to leave now. This isn't over, she screamed as they escorted her out. You can't just throw away 3 years. You can't just throw away love. Watch me, I said. But she was right about one thing. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. That afternoon, I met with Detective Sanders at a construction site on the outskirts of town. It was one of those half-finished office complexes that had been abandoned when the developer ran out of money, all exposed steel beams and concrete shells. Sanders had suggested it as a meeting place because it was private, and what he had to tell me required privacy. Your boy David's getting desperate, Sanders said, lighting a cigarette despite the rain. He's been making calls to some very interesting people. What kind of people? The kind who don't ask too many questions about where intellectual property comes from. Black market tech brokers, overseas manufacturers, the whole shadowy ecosystem that exists around stolen patents. He handed me a manila envelope. Photos, recordings, bank records. He's trying to sell your technology to the highest bidder. I flipped through the documents. David meeting with known IP thieves in hotel bars. Bank transfers to offshore accounts. Emails discussing proprietary algorithms and exclusive licensing deals. It was enough to put him away for years. This is federal crime territory, Sanders said. Patent theft, wire fraud, conspiracy. The FBI would love to get their hands on this. Not yet, I said. I want to handle this personally first. Sanders raised an eyebrow. Handle it how? Leave that to me. I called David that evening and suggested we meet. Neutral ground, I said. Just the two of us, no lawyers, no drama. He agreed, probably thinking he could talk his way out of the mess he'd created. We arranged to meet at the construction site where I'd met with Sanders, isolated, private, and perfect for the kind of conversation we needed to have. David arrived first, which surprised me. He was standing near his rental car, a beat-up Honda that was a far cry from the BMW he'd lost, looking nervous and checking his phone every few seconds. He looked up as I approached, and I could see the fear in his eyes. Eli, he said, thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it. I stopped about 10 feet away from him, close enough to talk but far enough to react if he tried anything stupid. Nice car. Rental? Temporary setback. He tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. Listen, I know you're angry. Angry? I laughed. David, I'm way past angry. Angry was 3 days ago. Now I'm just curious. Curious about what? About how far you're willing to go. The affair, the pregnancy, trying to steal my company, that was all personal. But selling my patents to black market dealers, that's just business, right? His face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and played one of Sanders' recordings. David's voice, clear as day, discussing the sale of proprietary software algorithms to a man with a thick Eastern European accent. That's not what it sounds like, David said quickly. I was just exploring options. Options for committing federal crimes? It's not illegal to have conversations. It is when those conversations involve conspiracy to commit patent theft. I stepped closer. You know what the penalty for that is, David? 10 years. Minimum. Federal prison, not some country club. 10 years of being someone's witch because you couldn't keep your Johnson in your pants. You wouldn't. But his voice shook when he said it. Try me. We stared at each other in the rain. Two men who'd once been closer than brothers, now separated by betrayal and greed. The construction site around us was silent except for the sound of water dripping from exposed steel beams. What do you want? David asked finally. I want you to disappear, I said. You and Lena both. I want you to take your bastard child and your pathetic excuses and get out of my city, out of my state, out of my life, forever. And if we don't, then I call the FBI and let them sort it out. Your choice. David was quiet for a long moment, rain running down his face like tears. She really loves me, you know. It wasn't just love. We have something real. Then you should be happy together. Somewhere else. What about the lawsuit? Disappear and I'll drop it. Stay and I'll pursue it to the fullest extent of the law, plus the federal charges. He nodded slowly. I need time. You have 48 hours. That's not enough time to... Then you better start packing. I turned to walk away, then stopped. Oh, and David, if I ever see you again, if you ever contact me, if you ever even think about using my technology or my name, I will destroy you. Not financially, personally. I will make it my life's mission to ensure that you never have a moment's peace. Are we clear? He nodded, not trusting his voice. I left him standing there in the rain, a broken man contemplating the ruins of his life. It should have felt better than it did. But I wasn't done yet. 47 hours later, I was sitting in my office when Maria buzzed me with the call I'd been expecting. Mr. Green, there's a Detective Morrison from the FBI on line 1. I smiled. Right on schedule. Put him through. Mr. Green, this is Agent Morrison with the FBI's Intellectual Property Crime Unit. We received some interesting information about patent theft involving your company. Would you be available to discuss this matter? Of course, Agent Morrison. I've been expecting your call. What David didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that I'd already contacted the FBI myself. The evidence Sanders had gathered was too good to waste, and I decided that a federal investigation would be much more thorough than anything I could accomplish on my own. The meeting took place at the FBI field office downtown, in one of those sterile conference rooms with fluorescent lighting and government-issued furniture. Agent Morrison was a serious man in his 40s with the kind of methodical approach that made me confident justice would be served. We've reviewed the evidence you provided, he said, spreading documents across the table. Mr. Lin appears to have been quite busy. Patent theft, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit intellectual property crimes. We're looking at multiple federal charges. What's the timeline? We'll be making arrests within the next few days. We wanted to coordinate with you first, make sure we have all the evidence we need for a solid case. I handed him a flash drive. Everything you need is on there. Financial records, email communications, recorded conversations, witness statements. David Lin handed me enough evidence to convict himself 3 times over. Agent Morrison plugged in the drive and scrolled through the files. This is very thorough. You've been planning this for a while. I'm a careful man, Agent Morrison. When someone betrays me, I like to be absolutely certain of my facts before I respond. And the personal aspect? The affair with your fiancée? Personal matters rarely interest federal prosecutors, I said. But they do provide context for motive, don't they? 2 hours later, I walked out of the FBI building feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Justice was coming, and it was going to be federal, thorough, and absolutely devastating. But I still had one more loose end to tie up. Lena was waiting in the lobby of my building when I returned, but this time she wasn't screaming or making a scene. She was sitting quietly in one of the leather chairs, looking small and defeated. Security had let her stay, probably because she wasn't causing trouble. Eli, she said when she saw me, please, just 5 minutes. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in days. She was still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. But there was something different now, something broken in her eyes that hadn't been there before. 5 minutes, I said. We rode the elevator to my office in silence. Maria had gone home for the day, so we were alone. Lena sat in the chair across from my desk, the same chair where she'd sat dozens of times before when we were planning our future together. David's gone, she said quietly. Gone? He left this morning, packed his stuff, and drove away without saying goodbye. Left me a note saying he was sorry, that he couldn't handle the pressure, that I was better off without him. She laughed bitterly. 3 months ago, he was telling me we'd be together forever. Now he can't get away fast enough. I'm sorry, I said, and surprisingly I meant it. Are you? Are you really sorry, or are you just saying that? I'm sorry that you're in pain. I'm sorry that your child will grow up without a father. I'm sorry that the man you chose over me turned out to be a coward. But you're not sorry about what you did to us. No, I said. I'm not sorry about that at all. She nodded as if she'd expected that answer. The FBI came to the hotel this morning. They were looking for David. They asked me a lot of questions about his business activities, about phone calls and meetings. I told them I didn't know anything. Did you? Know anything? No, David kept his business separate from us. But I could tell something was wrong. He'd been getting more and more paranoid, more desperate. I thought it was just about your lawsuit. It was more than that. I figured. She was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. They said he could go to prison for a long time. Federal prison, yes. And you're the one who turned him in. I'm the one who provided evidence of his crimes, yes. She looked up at me, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Respect. You really are smarter than both of us, aren't you? We thought we were so clever, so careful. But you were 3 steps ahead the whole time. I had good teachers. Betrayal is an excellent education in human nature. What happens now? Now you figure out how to build a life for yourself and your child, without David, without me, without the company we built together. You start over. With nothing. With nothing, I confirmed. Just like I did when I was 18 and my father died and left me with a pile of debt and a trailer park address. The difference is I earned my way out. You'll have to do the same. She stood up slowly, her hand resting on her still flat belly. I loved you, you know. Before David, before everything went wrong. I really did love you. I know, I said. That's what makes this so tragic. She walked to the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for leaving you. I think we both know this relationship was dying anyway. But for the way I did it. For the lies, for the betrayal, for expecting you to just accept it. That was cruel. Yes, I said. It was. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, watching the rain streak down the windows and thinking about the last few weeks. I'd won completely, decisively, devastatingly. David was facing federal charges and had fled the state. Lena was alone and broke. TechFlow was mine, along with all the patents and intellectual property they'd tried to steal. So why didn't I feel better about it? My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Sanders. FBI made the arrest. David Lynn taken into custody at the Oregon border. Thought you'd want to know. I set the phone down and looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Lena was probably sitting in a hotel room, wondering how her life had gone so wrong so quickly. David was in a federal holding cell, contemplating 10 years in prison. And I was here, alone in my office, having achieved the most complete revenge I could have imagined. The rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. But some stains, I realized, don't come out in the wash. Some stains are permanent, marking not just the guilty, but everyone they touch. I packed up my things and headed home to my empty loft, to my empty bed, to my empty life. I'd won everything and lost everything at the same time. But that's the thing about satisfaction. Sometimes getting exactly what you want is the worst thing that can happen to you. 6 months later, I was standing on the roof deck of my loft, watching the sun set over the city, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was familiar. Eli, it's Lena. I hadn't heard from her since that day in my office. According to the private investigator I'd kept on retainer, old habits die hard. She'd moved back to her hometown in Ohio, gotten a job at a local marketing firm, and was living quietly while waiting for her baby to be born. Lena, I said, this is unexpected. I had the baby, she said. A girl. She's beautiful. Congratulations. I named her Hope. There was a pause. I thought you should know that David's in prison. He was sentenced last week. 8 years federal, no parole. I heard. Did you also hear that he tried to contact me from prison? Wanted me to wait for him, said we could still have a life together when he got out. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. 8 years. My daughter will be in 3rd grade when he gets out, assuming he serves his full sentence. What did you tell him? Nothing. I didn't respond. There's nothing left to say. I walked to the edge of the roof deck and looked down at the street below. Life was moving on. People walking their dogs, couples holding hands, families heading out to dinner. Normal life, the kind I used to have before betrayal and revenge consumed everything. Why are you calling me, Lena? Because I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For showing me who David really was. For forcing me to face the consequences of my choices. For making me grow up. Her voice was steady, mature in a way I'd never heard before. I was a selfish, spoiled woman who thought she could have everything without paying any price. You taught me that actions have consequences. That's a hard lesson. The best ones usually are. Another pause. I also wanted to apologize. Not for leaving you, I think we both know that relationship had run its course. But for the way I did it, for the lies, for the cruelty, for expecting you to just accept being humiliated. That was unforgivable. And yet I'm forgiving you, I said, surprising myself. Right now on this phone call. I forgive you, Lena. I could hear her crying softly. Thank you, she whispered. That means more to me than you know. What will you do now? Raise my daughter, build a career, try to become the kind of person she can be proud of. She took a shaky breath. What about you? Are you happy? It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Was I happy? I had everything I'd wanted. Complete control of my company, financial success, total victory over my enemies. But happiness? That was harder to define. I'm satisfied, I said finally. That's not the same thing. No, I agreed, it's not. After we hung up, I stayed on the roof for a long time, thinking about satisfaction and happiness and the difference between the two. I'd gotten my revenge. Complete, devastating, perfect revenge. David was in prison, Lena was struggling as a single mother, and I had emerged victorious from the wreckage of our relationships. But victory, I'd learned, was a cold companion. Satisfaction was a meal that left you hungry an hour later. Revenge was a fire that consumed everything, including the person who lit it. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria. Dinner with the Peterson Industries people confirmed for tomorrow. They're very interested in the merger. Peterson Industries, a Fortune 500 company that wanted to buy TechFlow for a sum that would set me up for life. I'd be rich beyond my wildest dreams, successful beyond anything I'd imagined when I was that poor kid from the trailer park. I should have been thrilled. Instead, I felt empty. The city lights were beginning to twinkle in the gathering darkness, each one representing a life, a story, a person trying to find their way in the world. Somewhere out there, Lena was probably feeding her baby daughter, maybe singing her a lullaby, trying to build something good from the ashes of her mistakes. David was in a federal prison cell, facing 8 years of consequences for his choices. And I was here, alone on my roof, having won everything and wondering why it felt like losing. I thought about calling someone, a friend, a family member, anyone who might want to share this moment with me. But the truth was, I'd burned most of those bridges in my pursuit of revenge. I'd chosen satisfaction over relationships, victory over connection, being right over being happy. The rain started again, light at first, then heavier. I should have gone inside, but instead I stayed on the roof, letting the water wash over me, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. My phone rang again. This time it was Mick, my old friend from the auto shop. Eli, you son of a witch, he said, his voice warm with affection. I just saw the news about your company sale. Congratulations, man. You did it. Thanks, Mick. So what now? You gonna buy a yacht, move to some tropical island, retire and become a beach bum? I don't know, I said honestly. Well, whatever you do, don't become one of those rich a-holes who forgets where he came from. You're still the same guy who used to help me fix cars on weekends, right? Am I? Heck yes, you are. Success doesn't change who you are inside, Eli. It just gives you more options. He paused. Listen, I'm having a barbecue this weekend. Nothing fancy, just burgers and beer and some of the old gang. You should come. I don't know if I'd fit in anymore. Bees. You're family, man. Family doesn't stop fitting in just because they get successful. His voice grew serious. Besides, sounds like you could use some friends right about now. He was right. I could use some friends. I could use some normalcy, some connection to the person I used to be before revenge and satisfaction became my only goals. I'll be there, I said. Good. And Eli, bring an appetite. My wife's making her famous potato salad. After we hung up, I went inside and poured myself a drink, expensive whiskey from a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. I sat in my living room, looking at the space where Lena's things used to be, where our life together used to exist. The loft was beautiful, perfectly decorated, immaculately clean. It was also completely empty of anything that mattered. No photos of friends, no mementos from happier times, no evidence that anyone had ever lived here except me. I'd won the war, but I'd lost everything worth fighting for. The next morning, I woke up with a hangover and a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I called Maria and told her to cancel the Peterson Industries meeting. Cancel it? She said, confused. Mr. Green, this is $100 million deal. I know what it is. Cancel it anyway. But sir, Maria, I need you to do something for me. I need you to find Lena Carter's address in Ohio. There was a pause. Your ex-fiancée? Yes, I want to send her something. An hour later, I was at the bank arranging for a trust fund to be set up in the name of Hope Carter, Lena's daughter. $5 million to be held in trust until the child turned 18, with provisions for education and medical expenses. It wasn't charity, it was an investment in the future, a way to ensure that one innocent person wouldn't suffer for the sins of her parents. The bank manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd handled my accounts for years, looked at me with curiosity. This is very generous, Mr. Green. May I ask what prompted this? Let's call it satisfaction, I said. That weekend I went to Mick's barbecue. It was everything he'd promised. Burgers, beer, and people who knew me before I became successful, before I became consumed with revenge, before I forgot what really mattered. You look good, man, said Tommy Rodriguez, an old friend from high school who now worked as a firefighter. Success agrees with you. Does it? Heck yes. Remember when we were kids, talking about what we wanted to be when we grew up? You always said you wanted to build something important, something that mattered. Look at you now. You did it. I looked around the backyard at the faces of people who'd known me for 20 years, who'd stuck by me through good times and bad, who'd never asked me for anything except friendship. These were the relationships that mattered, the connections that gave life meaning. Yeah, I said, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. I guess I did. Later that evening, as I was getting ready to leave, Mick pulled me aside. You doing okay, Eli? I mean, really okay? I'm getting there. Good. Because for a while there, I was worried about you. All that stuff with Lena and David, the lawsuit, the revenge, it was eating you alive. It was necessary. Maybe, but necessary doesn't always mean healthy. He put a hand on my shoulder. The best revenge is living well, my friend. Don't forget that. Driving home through the city streets, I thought about Mick's words. The best revenge is living well. I'd been so focused on destroying my enemies that I'd forgotten to build a life worth living. But it wasn't too late. I was 38 years old, financially secure, professionally successful. I had friends who cared about me, skills that mattered, and the opportunity to start over. The next Monday, I called Peterson Industries and told them I'd reconsidered their offer. Not to sell the company, but to partner with them on a new venture. A foundation that would provide technology education to underprivileged kids, the kind of kids I used to be. We want to build something that matters, I told their CEO during our meeting, something that changes lives. That's a noble goal, Mr. Green. What made you decide to go this direction? I thought about Lena's daughter growing up without a father. I thought about David wasting 8 years of his life in prison. I thought about myself, alone on a rooftop, having won everything and feeling like I'd lost everything that mattered. Let's call it satisfaction, I said. 6 months later, the Green Foundation opened its first learning center in the neighborhood where I grew up. The opening ceremony was attended by local politicians, business leaders, and dozens of kids who looked just like I had at their age. Hungry, determined, and full of dreams they weren't sure they could achieve. Lena sent me a card. It was simple, just a photo of her daughter, a beautiful baby with dark hair and bright eyes, and a note that read, "Thank you for giving her a future. Hope is the perfect name for a new beginning." I kept the card on my desk, a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so good, so meaningful, so important, that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. David was still in prison. He would be for years to come. But I'd stopped thinking about him, stopped defining my life in opposition to his choices. He'd made his bed. Now he could lie in it. As for me, I was finally learning the difference between satisfaction and happiness. Satisfaction was getting what you wanted. Happiness was wanting what you had. And for the first time in years, I was both. Standing in the learning center, watching kids discover the same love of technology that had saved my life, I realized that this was what winning actually looked like. Not the destruction of my enemies, but the construction of something meaningful. Not revenge, but renewal. The rain had stopped, the sun was shining, and I was finally truly satisfied.